WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. Thank you for tuning to WVTC Radio Detroit and the Community Bell Show with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner, Edna Bell. Stay tuned for insightful information Detroiters will find valuable. Text a friend and tell them to watch with you for news you can use. And now, your host, Edna Bell.
Right. We are here today and on the Community Bell Show with, as you see, I am not Edna Bell. Edna Bell is away doing some election work, and we are allowing her to do that because we know how important it is for us to get out and get the vote out so that people will know what we're doing and how to govern themselves in our society. So we want everybody to get out and vote, get out and vote. Today we have a special guest with us, and we're going to invite him on. He is Marvin Cotton Jr., and he has a very, very unusual story but it's something that we need to hear. It's something that we need to know about. We need to know all of that. So, and he's also running for state representative for the 11th district. So we're going to bring him on. And how are you doing today, Marvin?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be on this show.
Oh, yes, we are glad to have you and so glad that you could come out today. Again, I hate I'm your host for today. So this is what we have. So, but before we got on, you were telling me a bit about your story, and it's very, it moved me. It moved me. So, why don't you give us a bit about your story?
Oh, thank you, thank you. I really enjoyed talking with you. Maybe we should have started recording a pre-show before the show. You're very engaging. As you said, my name is Marvin Cotton Jr. and I was born and raised in Detroit. I was born and raised on the west side of Detroit. I currently live deep east now, in Harper Woods. But growing up, I was like the everyday youth running around trying to enjoy life to the best of my ability. When I was 21 years old, I was falsely arrested and wrongfully convicted. I was convicted of first degree murder and felony firearm. And it took 19 years, 7 months, and 12 days in order to be able to prove my innocence and get out of prison. So, what happened was, the Wayne County prosecutor, Kim Worthy, who is courageous and actually leading Michigan, as well as Michigan is leading the nation with reviewing cases of innocence and getting people out of prison. And fortunately, I was one of the first cases to start being reviewed by this conviction integrity unit. And it was the Wayne County Prosecutor Office that took the lead on reopening and reinvestigating and getting me out of prison. Um, Nearly 22 appeals. And, we have some serious problems with our criminal justice system. So it's an honor to have a prosecutor like Kim Worthy
That's right.
um, that's courageous and brave enough to do what nobody before her did. Um, you know, Anytime you have a government of the people and by the people, different layers of government has to be worthy. And I can appreciate having, her with the conviction integrity unit. When I got out of prison, I seen the conditions that the community was in. And instead of taking the time that everybody was telling me, take some time for yourself and get yourself together. You've been locked up for 20 years. No one can be mad at you for taking some time to yourself. But when I seen the conditions that the community was in, I jumped in head first. I got to work immediately, volunteering my time, volunteering my voice, telling my story.
Hmm.
What I've learned is the undeserved suffering that I went through. It's almost like a medication for people that's going through something or going through some tough times. So I started using my story and telling my story to kind of encourage and help people get through whatever they're going through. I started a movement with it, and I started my business, Better Not Broken, LLC, where I do motivational speaking. I travel throughout the country. I've spoken at many law schools throughout Michigan. I go into high schools, middle schools, juvenile facilities. I also give community events and do community organizing and give events. I just had one the other day at Ball Duck Park on the Detroit's east side, where I brought nonprofits and organizations together to give free services to the underserved in our communities.
What's the
So
name
that's
of your LLC again?
better, not broken. Better, not broken. And I chose that name because I believe it embodies me. With all that I've been through, uh, I believe that I came through it better and not broken. And I want to give that same thing to people. But what kind of led me to the position that I'm in now. Tomorrow is the primary. That's a big day in our country. It's a big day in the state of Michigan, all the way down to your local neighborhoods. Tomorrow is a huge day.
That's right.
Um, and I'm running for state representative. And, being an exoneree, somebody that was exonerated for crimes that I didn't do, I still face a lot of the same problems that other people face for crimes that they did do. Just
Okay.
getting your
So you say that you are an exoneree, and some people may not know what that is. Um, do you want to explain what an exoneree is, as opposed to just uh, being a felon or?
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a great question because sometimes people don't understand what an exoneree is because it is something that doesn't happen as often as it probably should. An exoneree is someone that has been exonerated from a crime that they did not do.
Mhm.
Um, they were in prison or suffering a consequence for something that they had absolutely nothing to do with, and
So
that's what happened with me.
okay, so what were the circumstances regarding your incarceration?
I was convicted of first degree murder and felony firearm. A good friend of mine was murdered, and when the homicide detectives started investigating, they did a lot of underhanded things in order to get witnesses to say what they wanted them to say, and also hide information, hide witnesses that they didn't want to say, certain things. And um, that, along with a few other things, led to, my conviction. Fortunately, like I said, the Conviction Integrity Unit was able to uncover a lot of things. Just the years of me hiring private investigators and different lawyers, I was able to uncover some things. But when the prosecutor office reopened my case, they really took their investigation to a whole nother level. They have some very talented people. Valerie Newman, she's the director of the Conviction Integrity Unit. You have Chastity Youngblood and Patricia Little, who's a former homicide detective herself. They're on the investigative team, and they as well are prosecutors, and they really took that to a whole nother level and really unearthing.
So how long did you work to get yourself out? Barring you saying the entire 20 years, but um how how much time did it take you after you knew that this was something that you could pursue, getting yourself
Um,
out?
the, the Conviction Integrity Unit, they, of course, I fought every day. I never
Yeah.
relented. I never accepted. Um, um, I never accepted that death sentence that I was sentenced to, natural life without the possibility of parole. I never
And that was
accepted
your
that.
friend that passed away, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it took the Conviction Integrity Unit like 2.5 years. They're understaffed and they're underfunded. So part of what I do is I travel around, me and an organization of that I co-founded called the Organization of Exonerees. We get with prosecutors and attorney generals all over the country, especially here in Michigan, in order for them to get a conviction integrity unit. And we deal with the county commissioners and we ask for funding. We share our stories. And we've been successful in Macomb County, Oakland County, Washtenaw County, and we're working on several more counties right now. That's just right here in Michigan. But the reason it took 2.5 years with me is because there's no money in the budget for it. So that's
Yeah.
something that I believe voters and the general population really need to know, that you want to have a strong prosecutor office that's strong on crime, but you also want to have a strong prosecutor office that is well funded enough to make sure innocent people are not going to prison and make sure innocent people can actually get out if they've been wrongfully convicted.
Amen. So now, before, let's go back to before the crime, before all of that, you were happy, and you were living in Detroit? Are
Yes, I
you
was.
a native Detroiter?
Yes, I was living on Detroit's west side. I went to Mackenzie High School. I went to my first reunion in my life because all the other reunions I was incarcerated. So I went to my first reunion last month.
Wow. So
Yeah.
now, how long have you been out?
About 22 and a half months. I got out October 1st, 2020.
Okay. Okay. So
So after
during
the
the pan.
prosecutor, they went into the court and they asked the judge to release me. And about 2 hours later, I was walking across the parking lot to my mother and my daughter.
Did you, I mean, what we can't even imagine. Okay. And for the viewers, you were incarcerated due to something that you did not do. You could prove that you did not do it, but 20 whole years of your life
Yes.
is gone. You were spending 20 years of your life with people you didn't know, you didn't ask to be with them. We are with people out here because that's who we want to be with, but you were locked up with people you had nothing to do with. So now tell us the feeling that you had when you were able to walk out a free man.
You know, fighting for your freedom and fighting to prove that you're innocent, that's a real war.
Yeah, it is.
Um, and initially, when I found out that I was going to be going home, you don't feel anything. You're numb because you've just been in a 20-year long
Did you
war.
believe it?
Oh, I absolutely believed it, but
Okay.
I wanted to get farther away from the prison as I possibly could. So even though I believed it, I was moving pretty fast across that parking lot.
I know that's right. Like, don't change your mind. Let me get out of here. So now,
Yes.
how do you feel now at this point about crime, knowing that you got picked up being an innocent black man? How do you feel now about, the police? How do you feel about all of that? We know that black men, most of them already have a predisposition that I really don't like to be involved with the police.
Um,
So
I actually, I've learned to be very engaging. Um, just because you may have aspects of disagreement doesn't give you the excuse to disengage. I run into a lot of people. I'm out campaigning, running for state representative, and
Mhm.
I've run into people that say, "I don't vote. I don't vote." I say, whether you deal with politics or not, politics is going to deal with every aspect of your life.
That's
So
right.
just because you disengage, it doesn't mean that, politics is a life of its own.
That's right.
And if you have issues with the police department and certain officers, you still have to engage the department because they are public servants
That's
and
right.
they're there to serve the community.
That's
And if
right.
you disengage, you actually rob yourself of the power that the government that you have.
That's right.
So
That's
so
right.
what I do is I work with the police department at every opportunity that I get. I have a really good friend named Daryl Woods Sr. He's a returning citizen, great guy. He does more work than anybody I know in the community. He's boots on the ground every day. He's bone tired every night. I talk to him every day whenever I can get an opportunity. But he has something where he brings people from the community together with officers. It's called Better Together, and he forged those relationships on both sides, because a uniform doesn't make a person. I
No,
wore a prison uniform for 20 years, and the uniform said I was guilty, but I'm innocent. So I didn't let the uniform define me. I still carried myself with integrity. I still carried myself with dignity. Every officer I've ever come in contact with in prison, they will pull me to the side and say, "I don't know what you in here for, but you're not supposed to be in here." So
it's so
when I see a police officer, I don't judge them based on the perception that the world has given their uniform, because it's still a human being in there. Their
that's
brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their fathers, their daughters, their sons. They have relationships, they have friendships. They are more than the time that they spend on the job. And I find it very hard to believe that many people would sign on to get in between danger and people to do the wrong thing.
To do
So
the wrong thing. That's
it,
right.
right. So of course there's a culture that needs to be changed in the police department. No doubt.
Mhm.
But it's not going to change if people like me disengage. So
That's right.
I get very involved. If the police department is right, I got your back because you public servant. Money come out of my pocket, tax dollars come out of my pocket, and goes into the public servant's duty. You know, we buy those uniforms, those guns, those badges. We pay for the training and everything.
That's right.
So I'm gonna back you up when you're right, and when you're not right, we have to engage and make sure the proper systems are there so that the public can be protected and that the officers can actually serve out their jobs to make sure that we all good. So I like to engage. I like to come to the table.
So while you were incarcerated, I guess this is a question. What did you do? And how did you spend your time?
Well, you know, in those 19 years, 7 months, 12 days, I read over 2,000 books.
I could
So, I spent my time reading, writing, studying. I wrote several books. So I spent my time building myself up. I was so um, the thought of dying in prison and never having established a legacy that will outlive me kept me up at night. The thought of dying in prison and not being able to be in my daughter's life kept me up at night. And the thought of dying in prison off of lies, I wasn't going to allow that to happen. So what I did was I fashioned myself into a weapon. So I studied so that I can fight the aspects of the system that had been used to roll over me. So I spent my time in prison really disciplining myself and making sure that I grew intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. And I think it's serving the community pretty well because I'm using everything that I've learned under those circumstances in order to help other people.
now now that you're out and I could tell that you were just not an average person incarcerated. I could tell that you studied. So you being there, does that still have a stigma although you're exonerated? um do you still walk around with a stigma of I've been in prison 20 years? Do people treat you like you've been in prison?
Um, most everyone says that you don't wear prison on you. So when they meet me,
They
if
don't
I don't, if
automatically see it. Yeah.
yeah, if I don't say it, then they won't know it. But I always lead with my story. I believe there's healing in my story. I believe there's grace in my story. I believe it's something for everyone in my story. So I lead with it. I share it.
So
But I
so
do.
like even with your family and friends,
Right.
do
I
they?
do. I have had instances where I've had cousins and other family members or friends say stuff like, "Well, stay out of trouble." Like, what you mean, stay out of trouble? I was never supposed to be in prison to begin with. How dare you even say that to me? That's like one of the most offensive things that a person can say to me. Is use a undeserved suffering that was visited on my life for a very long time, and word something in that way.
Yeah,
It's like you really don't get it. That I was never supposed to be in there.
right. So now that people know a little bit about your background, how you got to become incarcerated, what you did while you were incarcerated, and now that you're back home, you decided to do something that most people don't do, and that's to get involved in what's going on around us. What made you become involved enough to say, I'm going to run for state representative?
The work that I do in the community, as well as the work that I do with help advocating for conviction integrity units to be established throughout. It brings me in contact with a lot of politicians and a lot of people that sit in offices, a lot of elected officials, and sometimes. moving people to be moved enough to make decisions that I believe is right. It's not as easy as them hearing my story. Sometimes they hear my story. I've cried with officials. They hear my story and like literally cried. I've cried with county commissioners and prosecutors, attorney generals. Um, um, because they're human. They hear these stories and
Yeah.
they can't
It could
imagine it
be
happening to them.
any of us.
Absolutely. But politics sometimes can be weird in that all of that can be very impactful, but not impactful enough to move. So instead of, sitting on one side of the table and begging, or asking over and over and over again for something to be done, I figured walking around the table and taking a seat may put me in the best position to be an advocate and a louder voice, especially for the 90,000 people in the district that I want to represent, but also in Michigan, because if I'm a state representative in the 11th House district, my voice is still a voice in Michigan.
Yes.
So
Yes.
every legislator, when they're attempt to bring a bill to the floor, and all of the things that go on behind the scene in order to get a bill to the floor, either I'm going to be an advocate or pro that bill, or I'm going to be an adversary and don't think it's good for the state of Michigan, and
And you
especially
bring
for
a
those that live in my
different
district.
perspective. You bring a perspective as to not someone that's been sitting here and like, well, you got kind of a fresh look.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a legislator in Michigan, and moreover, there's not a legislator in this country that is an exoneree or have done 20 years in prison for something they didn't do. That in and of itself, that lived experience has prepared me to see things differently. I was raised poor. You know, I was born and raised poor in Detroit, which is a unique perspective. But there's other legislators that can identify with that, as well as identify with the people that have grew up struggling. But not only that, having the experience that I had with the criminal justice system and how I was wronged by it gives me a very unique perspective of the problems from the inside out, like literally from the inside out. And those things have to be corrected. One of the worst things that any government can do, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is to convict an innocent person. No one wants to be pulled out of their home and put in prison for something they didn't do. Like that's for no one. So we have to correct or make that a very difficult thing to happen. Um, and the ripple effect of that is going to produce a better government. How could it not? If we can take one of the worst things that can happen to a citizen by the hands of the government off the table, if we can take that off the table, now we can start working on some of the other issues.
Mm.
So I want to change or help evolve and develop Michigan's fingerprint when it comes to issues like that. But what incarceration did to me is I don't like to see anyone suffer, like no matter what it is. Not only a wrongful conviction, but if you're suffering because you don't have proper health care or access to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you're suffering because it's been made difficult to be a voter or have access to the polls. Every issue we have in Michigan is tied to voting.
That's right. That's
Every
right. And
single
people
issue.
don't realize that it's the local elections that really
Absolutely.
determine what's going to
Yeah,
happen in your life. Every election
absolutely.
is local. So people like you that are running, we really need to know what you stand for, is because what you're going to do, the decisions that you make are going to directly involve me, and
Right.
they're going
And
to impact me.
so I appeal to the public. I'm appealing to the public just to get more engaged. When
Yeah.
you see something on social media,
Yeah.
or you see something on TV or read something on a flyer, if you know that one of your public servants, a politician, or someone that's in an elected position, whether you voted for them or not, if they have something going on, please go and engage them in conversation. Let them know that you're watching. Let them know whether you're a supporter. Even let them know what you disagree with, because people that's sitting in these seats, they want to know that. They
That's right,
want to know.
because you're not working for you, you're working for me,
Absolutely,
you know?
absolutely. So I appeal to the public to just to be more engaging. One of the strongest things, besides my story, that people love to hear while I'm out campaigning is they love to hear that I've never run for office before. It's like a wall goes down when they know that I've never held a seat before, because people just want to trust
So,
those that
yes,
are
right.
making decisions on their behalf.
That's right.
And we deserve that. That's not something that we should have to beg for, but we can do something about it. When you engage your public servants, you actually are holding them accountable.
That's right.
But when you don't vote, when you don't engage, when you don't register to vote, it's almost giving permission to those that are not necessarily serving you to continue along the path that they're on. But if the community in which you live, trust me, the communities that vote the most, somehow resources find their way in that area a little bit more than the communities that don't vote at all.
So, just so we'll know, the 11th district, we know that voting is tomorrow. Some people have their absentee ballots already. Some people are filling them out as we speak. Would you give us the boundaries of the 11th district?
Absolutely. You have part of the east side of Detroit, which you have Alone Mac. On one side of the Mac, you have Grosse Pointe, which is not in the district. So the district is actually on the other side, and it travels down past Casual. It cuts across, and Kelly is the border on the other side. So you have a pretty nice portion of the 11th House district that's in Detroit. But then you have Harper Woods, and you have about 80% of St. Clair Shores up to 11 Mile. So it's a very diverse district. St. Clair Shores is new to the district, which brings in a whole new type
Yeah,
of voter in the
yeah.
district. That's why a full representation of voters have to have to vote in order that you may your voice and your voice can be heard. You want your vote and your voice to be
And the
heard.
voice. That's right.
Absolutely. So this is a very diverse district. You have areas where rich people live. You have upper middle class. You have middle class. You have communities that are struggling, all in this same district. A part of my goal is I want to figure out ways to put the whole district on an even playing field. Because there's no reason that parts of the district or most of the district should be beautiful, and then there's parts that are suffering.
So
Um,
now, how are you doing? Have you gone out into the community to meet your potential
oh,
constituents?
oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
if
Every
so, what
every day.
kind of response have you been getting?
Every day. I've been out there for months. Every day, um, and people seem to take to me very well. Even people that are on the other side of the political
Mhm,
party, a
mhm,
different political party,
mhm.
once they hear my story, they listen. Y- I've been told by some very very conservative people that um, you have my attention now. I hear your story. I'm gonna definitely listen to you. I'm gonna give you that respect when I normally don't listen.
And
Um,
you're right. You don't present prisoner. You know what I'm saying?
right, right.
You don't
And
present that.
oh, people. In fact, what happened to me seems to build a trust with people that haven't necessarily been engaging with the government.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a way to connect with people, and like I said, although I suffered under it, it's a blessing in disguise because it's allowing me to do a work with the people. My story is allowing me into people's homes, and into people's space in order to hopefully help the collective move forward. But people seem to be very receptive to me,
Great.
and I'm loving it. I'm hearing so many different stories. You would never know how many different type of people it is in this world until you run a campaign or a part of somebody's campaign.
Yeah.
You're going to hear so many beautiful stories, so much history. You're going to meet people that's connected to the city of Detroit or whatever area they from in ways that you couldn't even imagine unless you're having multiple conversations every day. And that's the part of the campaign that I'm enjoying the most. The lack of sleep, not so much.
Well, we're going to know tomorrow, and we wish you all the best. And we really, really appreciate you for coming on to the show today, to the Community Bill. And we want to let everyone know that Marvin Cotton Jr. is running. He is a candidate for state representative in the 11th district. If you are in that district, please consider giving him a chance. Consider voting for him. Tick the box. You've heard his story. You can get in touch with him. How can people get in touch with you, Mark?
You can find me and follow me on Facebook, Marvin Cotton Jr. I'm also on Instagram, the_real_FMC. Also, I have business pages on Facebook and Instagram, Better Not Broken. I'm not hard to find. You can Google my work and the things that I've been doing in the community. Please do your research today. I think you'll be more than a voter. I think you'll be a huge supporter.
Amen. Amen. And we're going to, again, we're sitting in today for former Commissioner, the Honorable Edna Bell, who
Absolutely. I
is
love it.
out doing what she does, and that's getting people to vote. That is one of her campaigns, is just to get people to vote. And so we took the broadcast today. We thank you all for tuning in and for listening. We're going to allow Marvin Cotton, we're going to allow you to get the closing thoughts. So it's all yours.
Thank you. I am a servant first. I live to serve. I hope that people would consider voting for me, as well as if you don't live in the district, you can always, reach out to family and friends and people that you know in the district. You can share anything from my campaign onto your Facebook pages, or Instagram, and tag people in it. Please do. I know if you do your research on me, if you just Google my name and look up the work that I do in the community long before I thought about running for office, I think you'll be more than a voter. I think you'll be a supporter, and I most certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, Mr. Cotton, we wish you all the best. We're going to get out and vote. We're not in your district, but we will be voting. And we're going to
Absolutely.
tell everybody that we run into between now and tomorrow, take your souls to the polls and
That's right.
vote.
That's
Amen.
right.
Amen. Well, best wishes to you, sir. And we'll be talking to you.
Oh,
Thank you,
thank you.
everybody, for tuning
Thank
in
you
to
for
the
having me.
Community Bell. Amen.
Thank you for listening to Community Bill with your host, former Wayne County Commissioner Edna Bell. This broadcast was brought to you by WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, tell a friend to tune in. We'll see you next Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern to the Community Bell Show, right here on WVTC Radio Detroit. You're listening to WVTC, Gospel Radio Detroit, and we're flowing in the spirit.